Hey everybody, this is Danny Cooper from PriusChat.com, and today I'm joined by
Russell Frost from What Drives Us.
And today Russell and I are going to kind of give you a little lowdown on the Prius C. We were lucky enough to be invited to a press event by Toyota, I guess a week ago.
Yeah, a week ago today.
And we got a lot of great information. So basically we wanted to kind of go through that for you, and this will include some technical information. This will include driving impressions, impressions of the interior, the exterior, the audio system, etc. So we should probably get this thing on the road.
And our usual enlightened commentary. Absolutely.
Enlightened. Good way to describe it.
Yeah, that's the nice word for it.
Well, I think the thing that is most important about the Prius C is going to be the price.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing that everybody wants to know is really how much cheaper is it going to be than the standard Prius.
Yeah, so let's go through that. There are basically four grades of the Prius C. We got the Prius C1, which is going to start at the promised under $19,000 price of $18,950. And the Prius 1 comes with a decent amount of stuff in the package, I think. You've got remote keyless entry, power windows and door locks, which you don't see on the base model of cars in this kind of subcompact market. It's got a really nice multi-information display that we'll go into in a little bit. It's got a somewhat decent audio system in that it has 4 speakers.
But they did thoughtfully include a USB and an aux input, and it's got Bluetooth, so that's not, I mean, it's
not awful.
Yeah, no, it's a stripped down thing, but it's good enough.
Yeah, it's a great, if you're looking to buy a hybrid for your kid, or if you're looking to get into a hybrid and have never been able to afford it and aren't really big on frills, it's a great package. But for $950 more, you can get the Prius C2 grade, which is $19,900. And it adds cruise control, a rear hard tonneau cover over the back storage area. You've got an adjustable driver's seat, and the rear seat is a 60-40 split, fold down seat instead of it just being a full flat down full fold down like it is in the Prius C1. And then it also upgrades to a 6-speaker audio system, which is a little bit nicer.
You get an engine immobilizer, which may or may not be very exciting, but you get a tilt and telescoping steering wheel. But that's okay.
And yeah, these do come with steel wheels at this point, right? Yes. With the wheel covers, until you get in the higher end grades.
Yeah, we're waiting for clarification on some of the options, like the sunroof and the alloy wheels. They're only included on this sheet on the Prius C4, which we'll get to in a minute.
But first we need to go to the Prius C3, which is actually a pretty big jump from the Prius C2 at $1,700 more. It starts at $21,635. Prius C2 and 3 are the two packages that I think I see a lot of people are going to go for. I think a lot of people are going to go for that. It adds the smart key system, not only on the driver's door, but also on the passenger door and the rear liftgate, which is something on the Prius liftback. Hate that word, but the Prius liftback that you have to move up a couple grades also to get to.
And you get display audio with our favorite infotainment system center in tune, and you get the other thing that I'm the only guy that loves, which is Touch Tracer, which is implemented a little bit differently in the Prius C than it has been previously. So,
you also get navigation, which isn't, it's a pretty nice little perk for $1,700 to get navigation, smart key.
Is this the first time we've seen Toyota Nav added for less than $3,000?
Yeah.
I mean, I say that kind of sarcastically, but honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great strategy that they're taking with the 2012 models and above. Now that they've got the in-tune system, this display audio is more of a base audio system for them than a navigation has previously, been a very upgraded package. So they've changed that.
Yeah.
So that's all for $21,635. For $23,230, which is another $1,700, you get the Prius C4. The Prius C4 comes with fog lamps, some pretty nice looking alloy wheels.
Very nice looking wheels, yeah. You get heated front seats and Softex.
Yeah, Softex, which I like more than leather. So basically you're looking at a topped out Prius C at $23,230. And that's without the sunroof option. And there's also an upgraded wheel option that we'll show you in a little bit. But, for $23,000 for the top end package, I think that's pretty competitive pricing. What do you think, Russell?
Well, I think given what you get, I mean, you're talking about hybrid synergy drive, you're talking about 50 plus MPG, and we'll talk about that when we talk more about the driving. I think it's a heck of a deal. I mean, I think they did a good job pricing these packages out and pricing the car in general. It should be very, very competitive.
And they're keeping their distance from the standard Prius. All the packages are about $4,000 to $5,000 in a price difference between the Prius C and the Prius traditional, I'll call it. And so, for $23,230, that's under the starting price of the Prius. You get some features that are not in the Prius until you get into the higher end packages. So I think there's some value there, and I think it's gonna grab a good segment of the market. One of the questions that people have about this car is like, how is it actually sized? Because it's been kind of difficult to get a sizing comparison on it. Is it Yaris-like? Is it more like a Prius, like a traditional Prius? And while we were told that it's based on a modified Yaris platform, it's essentially an upgraded version of the Yaris platform. So it's not like you're driving around a hybrid Yaris. You're driving around a car that has had some modifications done to it to make it a little bit more high end. And we've got a slide that shows a size comparison, a real nice little outline size comparison, comparing it to the Yaris and the Prius.
Absolutely. And it gives you all the numbers so you can, compare the differences and see the outline so you get, just a visual idea of where the differences lie in this car. Other things, the difference, this is a modified 1.5 liter Atkinson cycle engine based on the second gen Prius, but it's smaller, and they've worked really hard at making a lot of the components in this vehicle smaller and lighter, obviously to increase MPG and obviously to be able to sell it at the price they're offering it.
Yeah, it's completely beltless now, so very low maintenance wise. Low worries when it comes to maintenance, and that 1.5 liter engine from Toyota has been well vetted in the Prius lineup before.
Absolutely, this is a workhorse in the Prius line.
Should also mention that it's got a 0.28 coefficient drag, which is higher than the Prius. The Prius is a 0.25. The second gen Prius was a 0.26, but it's actually lower than the. I think the first gen Prius was 0.29.
The engineers were talking about how it's much more difficult to get that lower coefficient of drag in a shorter car.
Well, and speaking of shorter car, I mean, it was pretty interesting to see all the changes that they made to transaxle and other pieces to in the inverter, for example, to really get these hybrid components to fit in a car this size without giving up the economy that those size pieces provide.
Everything's smaller in the Prius C, and for good reason. And obviously, the battery pack is much smaller. The standard Prius, much larger, 168 cell pack. The Prius C, smaller, 120 cell pack, still nickel metal hydride. And this one's back under the back seat now. And that was to preserve room in the hatch area. Yeah,
basically to allow them to keep a spare, I think, more than anything else. But yeah, it also gives them some space in the cargo area as well.
Yeah, lower voltage pack, certainly appropriate for the size and weight of the vehicle. Let's get closer to the driving experience. Let's talk about driving modes.
Yeah, the Prius C gets rid of one downfall of having the smaller battery pack is that it gets, and actually smaller components, is that it gets rid of the power mode in the Prius C. And while you probably don't really need it with a car this light, it's definitely changed the driving dynamic in the standard Prius. But in this car, you get the eco mode and the EV mode, so you're not you're not missing too much, to be honest with you. I found the standard mode to be plenty peppy, but we'll go into that with our driving impressions.
Danny, we should talk about the vortex generators.
We should talk about the vortex generators, because it's not every day you get to save vortex generators.
Not unless you're on Doctor Who, no. And we've got a little picture of the vortex generators, of where they are and what they are. And I love stuff like that. Just the little detailing things, you know.
Small things that probably add up to a lot when it comes to a hybrid car, and increasing or eking out every MPG you can get out of it.
Absolutely.
The interior is interesting. Mostly, they did this interesting thing in the presentation where they said that it's made to feel like both the driver and the passenger gets 60% of the dash space. And Russell, you and I were talking earlier, and basically that just means that they had to cram so much stuff in that it's kind of overlapping a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, it's billed as a convenience feature when in fact it's just a lack of space. It's not bad. I mean, the car doesn't feel cramped, but it is definitely smaller than Prius.
Oh, yeah, definitely smaller. I mean, you and I were shoulder to shoulder pretty much while driving.
Yeah, we did some of the elbow bumping thing.
But, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just...
No, not at all.
It wasn't quite like the several inches that we had between us and the Prius V, for example. But this is a totally different car.
Absolutely, yeah. And we should probably talk about the new seats.
We should.
Which you remarked on. This has all new seats that are based on the new Camry seats?
Yeah, a whole new generation of seats are available in the grade 2 and up. The grade 1 has like a standard seat, and the grade 2, 3, and 4 have this next generation seat that's better than the seat that's in the Prius, better than the seat that's in the Prius V, and it's based on the seat that's in the new Camry. And I found them to be very comfortable.
Yeah, I thought they were comfortable as well. I mean, I didn't notice any discomfort, and for me, that's something, because I'm a complainer.
You tend to complain.
Yeah, I'm good at it.
I also found the rear seats pretty comfortable, Russell.
We had to do the thing where we sat in the back of the car, and just like, so what's
before
it like?
We even sat in the front, we sat in the back.
Absolutely. But I mean, that's important, because you don't want that fake, 4-person car. I thought the Prius C rear seats were actually comfortable, and there's enough room back there for a real human.
There were. We had the front seats in a position where we would normally put them to drive, and we sat in the back seat, and I was comfortable. So
yeah,
so good job. Which I think that's another one of these DNA things with Prius that's fairly important, is the rear seat, because the rear seat in the Prius from the second generation on has always surprised people with the amount of room that's back there, and so that adds more to the utility of the vehicle to be able to actually carry people around.
I agree completely. I think that's a really good point. No, interior-wise, there's definitely a different feel in this car with the interior than there is in Prius or Prius V. It's, and I'm going to say this kind of guardedly, it's more plasticky.
It is, but let me be totally honest. I hated the interior, like the dash stuff from the pictures. I thought it looked pretty cheap. In person, I was actually pretty impressed with it. For the segment of car that we're looking at. Right. For a subcompact car, yeah, the dash, even though it was like, hard plasticky, it still had like grains thrown into it, nice little details that you wouldn't see getting into a Versa or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the pattern on the upholstery is repeated on some of the dash and door elements, which is nice. I mean, it's nicely done. It's not, I don't want to say it's cheap, but it is definitely a different feel and look than a standard Prius interior. And again, it's as it should be. This is a much less expensive vehicle.
Well, and I think that goes out to what the chief said as far as his goal when he designed this car was not to make it for Prius owners. It was to make it for people who previously didn't want to get into the Prius, and to kind of indoctrinate them slowly, I guess is the way to put it, into Priusdom.
Yeah, that may have been the most important thing he said while we were there, because I was really blown away. I mean, it was intentionally designed to not be real Prius-y. And this is something that you had said months ago.
Oh, it's something I've been complaining about for months. Yeah.
On what drives us. And I've never really I said, oh, I don't know. I kind of see the connection. I get it. But it was interesting to hear him say that, no, I intentionally kind of did things differently with this vehicle. Yeah.
I asked that question in the Q&A. You can actually see the Q&A as part of a video that we're doing over on Prius Chat. So if you go to the YouTube channel, priuschat.com, all spelled out, DOTCOM, you can see the Q&A that we did afterwards. And the question I asked was basically, with this car being designed as both the Aqua in Japan and the Prius C here, I was basically trying to get to, is that why this doesn't look like a Prius? Is that the downfall of designing one car for one market and one car for another market? And that's when he gave the answer that, this is basically not supposed to be a traditional Prius. And it never really made sense to me until he said that.
Right. It's an interesting strategy. And we'll see how the Prius C sells. Will it appeal to people that previously didn't think the Prius was cool?
Well, the exterior of this car is pretty attractive, I think. Much more attractive in person than I thought in the photos. Like, the photos made it look cutesy. And in the in person, it looks more daring.
More aggressive.
Yeah.
It has an aggressive face in the front.
The different selection of wheels, I think, helps with that.
I happen to think it's cute, and that's okay. But that's just different perceptions by different people. I've always liked the styling of the car. I'm kind of into that. But yeah, the interior is pretty roomy for a smaller vehicle. And there's a decent amount of space there to be used. Again, I think that goes back to the good things from the Prius DNA that they kept in this vehicle, which is usable passenger and cargo space.
Definitely. All right, well, let's get into that combination meter.
Combination meter? What a horrible name. Can we call
Multi-information display?
That's kind of passé, isn't it?
So the combination meter on the Prius C is a pretty nice color screen. And it's actually, I think, in a great position. It's a great size. It's a great dimension. I think it's in a great position for the driver and for the passenger to be able to watch, be able to look at. And it's got some great screens to it. So let's go through those real quick because we have some great slides to show.
Absolutely. There's a beautiful little Prius C slide, and then you go into your various energy monitor screen. There's a drive information screen, an Echo Score screen. Did we ever really figure out how Echo Score worked?
No. It basically it tells you if you're being a good boy or a bad boy.
Yeah, but
based on how you start off from the line, how you do when you're cruising, and then how you approach a stop sign or stoplight.
We were getting good MPG, but our Echo Score wasn't so hot.
Yeah.
That was the thing that kind of confused me, and I'm easily confused. You know what, for me, the big takeaway on this screen is how much different it is from every other Prius information screen. It's beautiful. It's sharp. The colors are nice. There's a lot of good use of various color. There's a lot of different ways to configure it. You want to talk about the MPG and the savings thing?
Yeah, that was pretty cool because you can basically put in not only the MPG of other cars, like your previous car, let's say, if you had another car that was 30 MPG, combination meter, we'll call it. It keeps track of how much savings you have over, however many miles you've been driving. And with that also, you can put in how much your cost of fuel is. And so you can see how much you've been saving compared to your previous car.
That sort of configurability and that kind of information is really cool. You get a cents per mile thing, you get the savings. Being able to do that is something only this car does, right? You can't do that in V or in the standard Prius. No,
you can't. And I really liked also the monthly graphs of how many miles you've driven and what your overall MPG was for that month. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think Toyota's done a nice job of finally listening and kind of putting more information into that thing and making it look less like something from the 90s.
Yeah, what they've done is they've provided more information than you'll ever need so that if you and I want different information, we can have it. So like while you were driving, you had a different screen up than when I was driving.
Right. Absolutely. My only quibble with it, and I don't know that any car has this, but my only quibble with it is the only way to control that is on the steering wheel. It would be nice if there were dash accessible controls the passenger could view.
Well, there's a big dial there on the dash. What does that do, Russell?
It takes up about half an acre of space. Yeah, the largest knob on the dash is the temperature setting button. Apparently, someone thought that was the most important thing on the dash to make accessible, and they definitely made it accessible. It is large. It is worth mentioning, though, that this car has automatic climate control. You can set a temperature in the car.
It does. The base one has automatic climate, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's not a small deal. You get into a Corolla and it's either hot or cold, and how much do you want it blasted at you? And unlike the temperature control knob, the smart key system in this looks a little different. It's a little smaller.
I think the word I used was Spartan.
Spartan is a very good word. Yes.
And I will say this real quick about the display audio system. I remember we didn't really play with it much this time because we've played with it before with the Prius V. But what I remember from the Prius V is that we had much more success using Intune in the display audio models than we did in the higher end models. And so it might actually be a very good thing that the highest end radio that this car gets is the display audio, because I think that's the one that the Intune stuff works best in.
It's simpler. Yeah, there's less junk to, in between you and what you actually want to do. I mean, overall, it's a nice dash layout. My personal biggest quibble is I hate the shifter on the floor.
Most traditional Prius people do.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the shifter on the floor, but, we're back to a floor shifter. They did that basically because it's cheaper.
It took up a ridiculous amount of room.
The shifter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's my third cup holder right there.
Or your third and fourth.
Yeah.
Or just anything. But they did kind of make up with it with driver's seat upper tray. Mm-hmm. So like in front of the steering wheel, there's a bit of storage, which fit my cell phone perfectly. And I'm sure you could put a couple other things up there.
And the upper packages have a cool little blue color trim piece in there that's nice. You like that.
I did.
So
thought it looked good. So the Prius C also has a lot of different safety features. I know when people get into a car this small, they start to worry about some of that stuff. But the impression that I received actually made it sound like they had put a lot of thought into it. It's got 9 airbags. So it's got knee airbags. It's got seat cushion airbags, which was I'd never heard of that. Had you, Russell?
No, that was a wholly new one. Yeah. I think
it basically is an airbag that kind of lifts you up to put you in the proper position for the front airbags to properly kind of cradle you.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. So they definitely went out of their way to make this car more structurally sound, and I think address safety concerns of people that are worried about a smaller vehicle. There's a lot of crumple zones built into the frame that are very cool. Some extra spot weld points that they've added. There's a cage around the battery in the back seat. I didn't get in that car and ever feel like, wow, I'm in a little box, and if we hit anything, it's going to crumple.
Well, let's talk about almost hitting things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our driving impressions.
Okay. I was pretty impressed. It's got a stupidly small turning circle. They've intentionally positioned the wheels on the corners of the vehicle, and this thing turns around. Danny, did you test that by any chance?
I might have tested that. Cue the video, Russell.
Yeah. The video you're now watching is Danny testing that, doing some, what we should call them tight circles.
Very tight circles in a residential area.
Residential area.
With people probably looking at me funny.
And wondering why we were squealing around in a circle in their cul-de-sac.
But it was fun, It's like something that you can't really do in a normal Prius.
No.
And so this is like the fun Prius.
In a way, it is. I mean, it's definitely, if you need to make a U-turn, no problem.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and say I was completely impressed with the driving dynamics of the car. Again, you have to look at for what it is. It doesn't drive as well as the Prius V. So if you're going to go on a long trip, don't expect it to be as comfortable as the Prius V if you have any experience with driving a Prius V for a long period of time. It's just a different class of car. So, but we put probably 50 miles on it in one trip.
In the one trip, I think it was 50 or 60 actually.
Yeah, 50 or 60 miles, and I didn't get out of the car uncomfortable.
No, not at all.
But it doesn't have like the pitch and bounce system that the Prius V has. That even the liftback doesn't have. So, it's got certain. You can feel a little bit more in the road than you can in a car the size of the Prius V. And again, we're comparing it to the Prius V just because it's the most recent one that we've test driven. So
yeah, I mean, it dealt with speed bumps pretty well. It did feel a little stiff sometimes going over potholes and whatnot in the road. I thought it handled really well. I mean, the steering feels good. It feels very positive, which is kind of un-Prius-like.
Yeah, the only complaint that I had really while driving the car was at one point we were driving with the windows down, and there was a whistling noise that I heard that actually you didn't hear.
Yeah.
So it must have just been at my dog level of frequency.
Older drivers may not hear this, is what Danny's trying to say.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm trying to say. But there's this whistling coming, and I finally figured out that if you fold the side mirrors in, the whistling goes away. So it's actually the air coming over the side mirror. Maybe it has something to do with the vortex. What are they called?
The vortex generators?
Yes, vortex generators. It's generating a vortex of whistling
around the mirrors. That's interesting. What I didn't notice is when you have one or two of the front windows down, you get that sort of harmonic kind of rumble.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice that in the C.
I didn't hear it either.
Yeah.
There is only auto up down on the driver's door, right? So on the other three windows, you actually have to still hold the button. It's like 1972.
Man, technology. The other thing is that people ask about driving is that rear visibility is always an issue with Prius. And it wasn't bad. I noticed, or I said the first Prius hack is going to be removing the rear headrests, and you're going to have beautiful rear vision because there's nothing. It's nice.
They did slightly get in the way, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I guess if you're not carrying passengers a lot, the thing to do would be to take those headrests off and
just chunk them in the back or on the floorboard.
Yeah, something.
There was a bit of a blind spot for me, and it could be just because I wasn't used to the car, but there did seem to be a blind spot in the back right corner. There seems to be a lot of sheet metal between the rear passenger window and the hatch window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the rear window.
Definitely.
And so there was a little bit of a blind spot for me there, but that's really the only complaint I had as far as visibility. When I was actually driving, I didn't notice it. It was only when I was like backing out of a parking space, I think.
Well, and that was the one thing that I miss, and I'm spoiled because of my third gen, is I miss a backup camera.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to sound.
Is that well? I don't mind sounding that way, so I'll give the Thurston Howell III complaint. There's no backup camera. It's a much smaller car. It's much easier to park and to drive. I don't know that a backup camera is something that most owners of this car are going to want, but there it is anyway.
But we were going, 75, 80 miles an hour at one point, and I never felt like the car was unstable. Overall, got a really good feeling from the driving impression of it. Yeah,
we climbed Mount Soledad in San Diego. No problems getting up the hill. No problems accelerating. Passing at highway speeds wasn't really an issue.
That was another thing I want to say, actually. I'm glad you said that, is that I never felt like the car was in labor. It never had a labored feeling to it that it wasn't able to perform the way that I wanted it to when asked.
Right. I'm sure there's going to be a dozen reviews complaining about the CVT, and not feeling the power of the car shift. I would say ignore those, because if you're at all familiar with Prius, you're already used to that. The real issue is, does the car accelerate? Yes, it accelerates just fine. it's pretty quick, actually. Not especially fast in the 0 to 60 department, which is the thing that we kind of hate to talk about, and here I am bringing it up.
Yeah, it wasn't even included in the presentation. Someone had to ask it in the Q&A.
Yeah, and that 0 to 60 time is 11.5 seconds. It doesn't feel like that, though, and I guess that's just because you're in a smaller vehicle.
No, it's plenty quick for the its intended environment, which is the city.
Yeah.
I thought that 0 to 10 was probably great.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That low mile per hour acceleration is quick off the line, as you demonstrated several times, and as I did too. It really is the ideal urban vehicle because of the turning radius, because of the smaller size. Because of the power range that the car naturally has, it's going to be a hell of a city car.
Well, let's talk about the real reason why it's a hell of a city car.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So we've kind of dogged the real issue here. Is Danny, what was your MPG on that long trip?
At one point, it was at 4.8?
Or maybe higher, yeah.
Yeah, I ended up with 60. And this is a lot of mixed driving. This was interstate, going up a mountain road. This was coming back down, and then a really big road, really big hill right before the end that kind of, I think I was 64.8 right before we went up that hill, which was 2 miles away from our stopping point. So very impressive gas mileage. This thing apparently was not built very well to go through the EPA test, but I think in the real world test, people are going to be very, very happy.
Yeah, I think at one point I said somebody's going to hypermile the crap out of this car.
Oh yeah,
and that's definitely the case. The people that want to get higher MPG, I think this car has that top end potential, and that's going to excite a lot of people.
It really is, and I think it's going to be simple for the daily, non hypermiler to get over the EPA estimate. 53 MPG?
53 city, yeah.
Yeah, so I was getting 58 at one point on the interstate going 73 miles an hour.
I'm by no means a hypermiler, and I think, what was I at? Like,
you were at 55,
55, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't. So, and again, yeah, we climbed Mount Soledad. We were on the 15 freeway in San Diego, and we were in a part of San Diego that's very hilly. So this wasn't by any means conditions that were set up just to give us super high MPG. I that's probably the most impressive thing about the vehicle is the MPG ability of this car.
I remember hearing rumors when the MPG numbers came out that, or I guess when the rumored MPG numbers were kind of circling their ways around, that Toyota was pretty unhappy with the way that the numbers ended up coming out, and they were looking at ways that they could go back to redo the test to try to get some more MPG out of it. And now I can see why they were so unhappy with it. It's not because of the way the car performs; it's because of the way that the car performs within the EPA test.
Yeah. So
hopefully, everyone who's watching this will also have a similar experience with the car, because I think. To be honest with you, Russell, I was hesitant again, just like I was hesitant about the Prius V. I was hesitant about this car, and I think that Toyota really knocked it out of the park.
Overall, I think it's a big success, and it will be very interesting to see how it sells. There's a lot of things in its favor, and I don't know what the competition is. It's certainly not the Insight. If you're going to spend $20,000 for a hybrid vehicle, what else are you going to get?
Great question. I think that's actually probably the way that we should leave it.
There we go.
Well, thanks everybody for watching our Prius C review. You've now learned about our driving impressions, the technical specs, and all the other fun stuff. So if you have any other questions about the car, feel free to check out the forums over at priuschat.com/forums. And if you're interested in all types of green cars, really suggest that you take a listen to Russell's great show, the What Drives Us podcast, which you can find at whatdrives.us.
Absolutely. Where there'll be even more information about the Prius C.
Definitely.
So, thanks.